Right, well, kia ora everyone. Welcome along to today's briefing. We're having a discussion on the Water Services Delivery Plan. Thank you to the staff that have pulled this together. There's been a lot of, obviously there's a lot of work going on around water at the moment, but this has been a piece, it's a new piece of a new document that DIA has asked for as a part of all their changes. I'm guessing staff are going to talk about that in a little more detail. That this isn't something that would normally have been produced as a standalone. It's normally caught up in our infrastructure plans, the 30-year infrastructure plan that we all looked through and approved through the long-term plan process, as well as the work that is in our long-term plan. That's all been uplifted and put into this document. It's part of the reason for this is so that DIA can see that the decisions that councils are making actually have some basis for that decision making, and there'll be some sustainable outcomes for communities once the in-house CCO or joint CCO models have been adopted. So many of you will have seen some of the work. I think Martin Jenkins has been really good at mapping where councils across New Zealand are at and showing the many councils that are working together at the moment. All of those groups will be doing their own water services entity plans, and so this is a consistent piece of work that councils are now having to do to fulfil DIA requirements. What it doesn't do is then direct, this isn't the piece that directs what the CCO actually will deliver. It just shows what the intent is currently and what can be done to meet financial sustainability and capital program, and for the DIA to say, your decision's sound and your decision making sound up to this point. There'll be other documents and other bits of work that in our case, the CCO will need to provide and show and communicate with our community on that's subject to future work to happen. And there's also expectations that we will continue to have as a council, which will sit again outside of this piece of work and be caught up through statements of intent and letters of expectation and those sorts of things. So Tim, I'll hand over to you if you want to say anything introductory about what this afternoon's about. I guess also this is a briefing so that you are prepared ahead of coming to council for a decision and to provide feedback to staff today around the things that we see and have in front of us. I think, Tim, you sort of saying before, there's nothing new in this, so maybe I'll hand over to you and you can talk to where's this information come from and how's it in front of us today.
Sure. Look, welcome to Murray and Alex down the other end of the room, and I'll hand over to them in a second and I'll take you through the plan in a bit more detail. But just to reiterate some of the key messages that you've just heard from Sam, there's nothing new in this document. The information has come primarily from our water service, from our long-term plan, 5 Water Assets Management Plan and the 30-year infrastructure strategy. It's a snapshot in time and does reflect the commitments we've made as part of the long-term plan, and it's intended to support a move to a new system rather than to serve as the primary mechanism to support long-term planning investment decisions. Those decisions are going to happen during development of the water strategy and long-term infrastructure planning process. We've been alongside DIA certainly recently in regard to the development of the plan, and DIA are comfortable with the content of the Water Service Delivery Plan and comfortable with the direction outlined in the plan. Simpson and Grierson have also confirmed a level of comfort with the plan from a legal perspective. And is Julie here today? There she is. So, and Julie will speak a bit more detail on that shortly. But now I think I'll hand over to Murray and Alex to take us through the plan in a bit more detail.
Thanks, Tim. Sam, good afternoon. And in this forum, acknowledge the loss of your grandmother. So best wishes on behalf of the PMO team to you and your family over the next few days. Thank you. Good afternoon, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. I'm not going to spend a whole lot more time talking through the plan in its entirety. I think the key for this discussion and briefing is to give you a sense of where we've got to, how we've got here, and what comes next, more importantly. As you know, this is a an odd piece of a requirement from DIA. It's a procedural one-off, and for those of you who've been through a gateway review process with the Treasury for large infrastructure projects or the establishment of new entities, you'll understand that this is a recognition of a current state at a particular point in time. It recognises that this is a process that's designed to give confidence and assurance to officials and agencies who can then provide ongoing advice upwards to ministers. In this instance, that the Selwyn District Council is ready to progress and meet the sensible preconditions of establishment and transition to a CCO, which continues to give effect to the decision that you made as a council on the 2nd of April. Similarly, this piece of work is designed to provide clarity about the way that the receiving entity, in this case the Selwyn Water Limited, is structured and resourced to deliver on current BAU as we move into the process of negotiating with you and jointly crafting the statement of expectation, the letter of intent, which is the response from the CCO alongside the jointly developed water services strategy, which will then take us into a end of transition period leading more into future state and best practice water management. Whilst both Sam and Tim have noted the comfort levels that have been expressed by DIA, and notwithstanding their informal review, it does not constitute an approval of the plan in its current form. That will only occur once this body has endorsed the plan and sent it to Sharon for her certification before it then goes to the Secretary for Local Government for sign-off and assent by the Minister. But it is good to note nonetheless that the DIA have not raised any red flags at all. And in general, they consider the plan to be comprehensive and detailed and an easy read, which is always nice when you see a document of this size and scale. They also note that their assessment of the financial sustainability of the contents of the plan haven't identified any major issues, and that it sets out and meets the requirements within the Local Government Water Services Preliminary Arrangements Act, which you've been briefed on previously. In addition, during the course of this week, Alex and I have had a number of conversations with other central agencies, including Taumata Arawai, the Water Services Regulator, Commerce Commission, who will be the economic regulator, and those two bodies have also informally provided feedback that suggests that they are also in support of the direction of travel of this plan prior to endorsement by the Council. And much of this work has been done, as you know, to smooth the path through establishment to transition and then onwards to best practice and future state for water services, and making sure that that trajectory is set off on the right path as we begin that process. I think it's also useful to just note for you at this stage that one of the conversations coming out of a chat with the Commerce Commission in the last 24 hours has identified that in the next fortnight or so we'll have the opportunity to make some comment on the enduring financial sustainability and disclosures information requests that they will be putting out for all councils to consider. As the economic regulator, they will be providing a benchmarking and, if you like, a league table about performance for organisations that are involved in water services delivery across the country, and they will be bringing to the attention of shareholders and communities the way that those organisations are being operated relative to investment and the resilience profile of their water assets, the future sustainability of the assets, asset management, procurement and commercial contract management. So there's a degree of complexity that we're going to face, and this plan, while it outlines a current state and time, again, will lead very much into the conversations that we'll have in August around establishing the grounds for the statement of expectation, letter of intent and the water services strategy. So I think that I will leave it there for the moment. Alex, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Tēnā koe anō, tēnā koutou katoa e mihi ana ahau mō te pōwhuri mai. I would like to acknowledge the substantial work the team have done on producing the document, and we have a very good representation here today, but it's been quite significant, and Catherine Hill had been kind of coordinating the piece of work, so very significant effort. I would also like to acknowledge their kind of commitment to putting our best foot forward in terms of the leadership around the water reform. I think that's been an enormous amount of thinking about how we can add some value, and the fact that this has been done primarily by the team at Selwyn District Council. It's just show the amount of capability and leadership that we have within the organisation, which I think is worthwhile noting. As a newcomer, I'm quite impressed with the amount of the skill that exists. And I think at our last briefing, the question was asked in terms of kind of my level of confidence in terms of delivering the outcome. And I think I reported the level of confidence was high, and I think it's continue to grow every week when I see the work the team does. The plan reflects not only the legislative requirements, but also the strategic intent that Mary mentioned. So I think it's a document that is based on today, but very much looking at the future. So I think it's set as well for those key pieces of work that come. Next, we already talk about the document outlining our requirements around drink water, wastewater, and stormwater. The document meets all of the regulatory standards, the financial sustainability test, and also supports that growth within that is captured within the long-term plan. As stated by Tim and by Murray, the Water Services Delivery Plan mirrors the assumptions, the budgets, the strategies already in place in the long-term plan. It's consistent with the 2024-2034 infrastructure strategy, and it's really an operational expression of the work that the council is already doing. The delivery model contained within the plan, it's a mixed model as per council's April decision. So drinking water and wastewater is done through CCO, and the stormwater is retained in-house. The implementation plan outlined in the document reflects what has been agreed by the council in terms of the establishment phase, the transition phase, and that kind of future state. Financial sustainability, I think we already talked. There's sufficient investment to meet the growth and renewal needs. There is sufficient revenue to support the changes, and we comply with the debt and affordability limits throughout the reporting period. This also reflects a conservative approach to ensure that affordability is maintained for ratepayers, and that we are taking our time to grow in a way that allow us to learn and kind of fine-tune as we go along. We already talked about some of the early discussions we have had around assurance and the review of the plan. I think that the consensus is that it's a good document, meet the requirements, and subject to any fine-tuning that may come from today, it probably it will be well received. In terms of the what comes next, it was already mentioned that the water services strategy will be the key document that allow us to kind of plan for the future. So this is just a transition stage. So at this point, I'll pause. I don't think I have a lot more to add. So hand back to you, Tim and Mayor Sam.
Great, thank you for that introduction. Councillors, you got any comments on this or questions around what's been presented, or things that you've picked up in the document that you've got some things you'd like to raise about? Yeah. Oh, Elizabeth, sorry.
Hi, thank you. In our page 5, we've got here revenue sufficiency has been determined taking into account the affordability as a percentage of household income, with the lower levels benchmark of 2.5% of household income. Is that based on the average for the district?
That's correct.
Okay, because our average for the district is over 100,000 annual income a year, but we've got quite a large amount of ageing population who are going to be potentially on their own as pensioners, because we also have a high proportion of that, and they are averaging around 28,000 a year. So how are we going to bring the affordability back to meeting the requirements and affordability for those people?
Can I cover that? That's a very good point, and there's a bit of financial modelling, as I said, that use some, the data that is available. We are aware, and I think both discussed our earlier meeting, that we need to do some work in terms of how we may be able to support some of those that perhaps are not in the same situation. So that piece of work will be aligned with what the council currently does, and any kind of policies that you have to support, people that are in need. So the work that you have there is just the kind of financial modelling that show the financial sustainability, but we're very aware that we need to have provision for those that may not be able to meet the. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm done. I think, yes, there will be consideration as to how we support those that are more.
So we're looking potentially at a kind of a rates rebate for the Wesco side of things, as well as council's rates rebate.
I wouldn't want to venture into exactly what we will do, but we are aware that there needs to be some provisions in line with what the council currently does to support those that are in need.
Kia ora koutou. Before I get into any specific concerns, I just wanted to acknowledge the work that has gone into producing this document and the collective aspiration of everybody in this room to provide better water services for the district. You would have seen in advance that I sent through my questions that I wanted raised in this forum, and then since those questions were formulated, I had it clarified to me that there was $11 million of capital investment for Taumitu in this water services delivery plan, and I wanted to give an opportunity for you to comment and explain how that actually has come to be.
Thanks, Megan. So, look, we have no documented evidence that the funding that you mentioned was removed from the long-term plan. There is around 11 million of funding that has flowed through into the water services delivery plan. The water service delivery plan is a reflection of the long-term plan. The information we do have is a staff proposal as part of the long-term plan. You'll remember there was a discussion around 40 million of work that we had removed from the program, and as part of that information, it's clear in there that the funding that you're talking to was to be retained. We can find no documented evidence of any decision to remove that from the long-term plan, which is why you're seeing it in the water service delivery plan, albeit pushed out to year 6 and 7, I believe.
Sorry, I should have left my speaker on. So, Tim, I was quite surprised to see that and confused, and I think you were too. The conversations that we had is that we very much recalled that there was an intent from council to remove that $11 million, and now you're saying there's a technicality that there was some language in a resolution that didn't remove it, but it was staff recommendation to remove it, and this council did remove it. So why wasn't it removed?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the staff recommendation was to retain the funding, and there was no resolution made by this council to remove that funding from the long-term plan. It stayed in the long-term plan, and that's been reflected in the water service delivery plan.
Right, well that doesn't reflect what happened at the time though, because at the time there was a lot of discussion about Taumitu, about it being blindsided to have it removed after 3 direct engagements where it was wanted, and I had to do a lot of work to work with Taumitu through that process because it was clearly indicated it would be removed. And so from my perspective, and I think when we spoke on Monday, from what you shared with me on Monday, was that yes, it was a surprise, it was an intent, and I'm not saying we don't want it, because we've worked really hard for decades to say we really want it. But we don't want it on a technicality. We want it because this council really wants that for us and with us, and that's not what I actually heard from the councillors around the table at that time.
I understand, Megan, and I would argue it's not a technicality. What I would say is I recall some robust conversation around that last year. What I can't recall is the decision, and we've had to rely on the information that we've got to support that, and we can find no documented decision made by this council to remove that funding, hence why it's still in the Water Service Delivery Plan.
Right, well, I mean, it certainly stands against what I had thought we had agreed, and I think if we, and actually, in fact, I've looked all back through my written correspondence since, and my direct correspondence beforehand and afterwards clearly shows there was an intent to remove it. So either I'm going nuts, or there's been a mistake here, because how could I get it so wrong when I'm here to represent Taumitu and to hear that it's not going to be included, and then to be told now, when I point out, to be told, no, you got it wrong. And to me, either way you cut the cloth, this is not good ways to engage. And so from my perspective, I don't have confidence in the Water Services Delivery Plan as it's currently written. I don't have confidence that it's accurate. And for me, I would rather actually, if everybody around this council has a different perspective and everybody says, no, we are all in, we all agreed with that $11 million to go to Taumitu, then I'll go, thank you very much, because it's absolutely what we want. But if I'm walking away from here and that is not actually the truth of the matter, then I don't want for this community to have been hoodwinked into spending $11 million that this council never intended to spend.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. Look, all I can say is we've spent some time today going back through council meetings, looking at the minutes, looking at the resolutions, and we have no evidence of any documented decision to remove that funding from the long-term plan.
Okay, so from my perspective, it would be good to have a better, like I'm looking at the timing of this and I'm going, right, 2nd of September, right, is the date that we have to have it totally in by. And if I'm left in a position where I'm really still quite unclear about the position of council services towards Taumitu, then for me, I would rather slow down the process and go, what really is good decision making here? Because Taumitu, without a doubt, wants and needs the infrastructure. I think that we stand apart from other small rural communities in that we actually have the marae that gets lots of visitors every single day. And in fact, daily we host all Selwyn schools at the marae, so we definitely want the infrastructure. We just want to do it in a true and honest way that reflects great partnership moving forward. So my preference is really just to slow down the process, make sure that it's accurate. I don't understand why we have to adopt this next week as opposed to in another month and look at it a little bit more closely. And so then, and so I've heard some of the arguments over the last few days as we've been having discussions, and one of my key questions is, well, when it came to that resolution that was decided on the 11 million, what actually trumps? Is it the intent, or is it actually the formal resolution? And if it's that the formal resolution is flawed, then I would say that it's our job to stop and correct that and make sure that we do that properly. The other thing around tight timeframes, because I've heard some of that about what we're trying to do here is to work to a time frame. But I know even if we don't meet the September 2nd date, we can ask for an extension, but I don't even think that's necessary because it's the 11th of June. So The other part was talking about, well, this is actually just a transitional document. We're going to move on to the strategy, and that will focus on the long-term outcomes. And so from my perspective, even a transitional plan must actually reflect the real council decisions, and otherwise I think it can be misleading and it can risk embedding some inequity that we just don't want to exist. We want to genuinely have good decisions and good relationships moving forward. And I just also wanted to point out, so when it came to page 23 and mana whenua engagement, if it turns out that the answer is that $11 million was not intended for Taumutu, and I have got that wrong, in that case, in the event that the 11 million is not intended for Taumutu, it's taken out. In that case, I think that the mana whenua statement at the beginning needs to clearly reflect that we actually did advocate for that for our community and that a decision was made to remove it, so that it gives a fuller picture of the engagement with mana whenua. Yeah, I think that's my comments for now.
Thanks, Megan. And there's a couple of things you've raised around timing that I just think would be good to have clear. And Mary, maybe you want to pipe up about the timing piece. The Minister's been really clear. There is no reason for an extension beyond the date in September. And if you need help, ask for it in January or December, when he asked last year for us to seek that. And if we... There will be other steps taken if councils can't meet that deadline. I agree there's no pressure to meet, here we are in June, it's a long way from September, so that pressure's not really on us, but we also, he's reiterated a couple of times, it's not a deadline, like that's the final chance for you to do it. If you can have this stuff to us earlier, then please get it to us earlier. So just around that timing. But Murray, if you want to add any more to that, or even the need for this to happen next week as opposed to next month?
Look, I think that the process and the time frame has been pretty well understood from the very beginning, and the council were quite clear in terms of making its decision to progress with exploring the CCO model well before I arrived on the scene, and it then decided to continue on that process in the meeting of its 2nd of April, with all of that period of time being clear that the 1st of July was the date for standing up the organisation. I can't comment with any degree of accuracy on decisions that have been made or not made, or inclusions or exclusions prior to my arrival. So I have to rely on other members of the council who were here at the time in terms of that. I can understand your position. My view is, however, that in order for us to meet the broader council decisions around the establishment of the CCO, we need to maintain pace and momentum to ensure that we can actually get things done that we said we would get done, and make sure that we are in a position, with the commitments that have been made to the ratepayers of the district, that we will deliver on the promises that we've already made. Thank you, Sam.
Cool. I'd be interested to hear what other councillors' recollections are of what you've raised, Megan, because I remember that being a particular point of discussion 12 months ago, but actually where we landed, and I don't have, if you've got other notes on it, it'd be interesting to see what others recall or have written down at the time, because I think we did very clearly single that out, but I wonder whether that was singled out and then staff went away, and in between us having those deliberations, and Tim then brought back the $40 million of savings. He heard the intent and the savings were made, and the team found ways for those savings to occur that didn't include taking out the Taumutu piece. But it certainly was one of the things that was highlighted as the spending that we want to make now. But be keen to hear what others' recollections are of 12 months ago as well. Grant?
Look, I want to support you, Megan. You're not going mad. If you are, we're in the house together, because that was my recollection of the events. Mm-hmm. But I suppose rather than focusing on Taumutu, I suppose I'd rather focus on how the WISCO might work in practice. And I wonder whether it's helpful for us to be dictating which communities are in or out of schemes, because I would have thought the WISCO, when it's established, through the management structure or the board, will be deciding, looking at communities, does this community need reticulated water for a starter from environmental reasons? What's the most efficient way to deliver it? Is it a pipeline to the Pines? Is it an on-site treatment plant? What does it look like? And I just wonder whether by specifying particular towns and things, we're taking some empowerment away from the board and management of the new WISCO, which that should be just a fundamental part of their business, as each community. Like, I think my recollection of is, well, why do we choose Tamutu? Why don't we choose, our little friends down the road at Dunsandel, for instance? Why? How do we prioritise it? How do we decide? And I would have thought that the management would be doing that as part of their skills. They'll prioritise areas of expenditure. They will deliver the infrastructure as required due to environmental or whatever reason it might be. If Tamutu ticks that box, and I think we talked about, could we put an on-site solution on, I think was my recollection of, which was cheaper rather than having reticulated, putting a pipe right to, that's right in the wheelhouse of the management and governance of the WISCO. So we can get ourselves set up about it, but I just wonder whether we should just pull back and let them do it as part of their delivery, service delivery. Just a small thing on page 16 of our board books. It talks about engagement with the Runaka and the 4 PO, but we've only got 2 PO. We're missing 2 PO somewhere. They've dropped off. Yeah. Just a little typo somewhere that's missing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Grant. I think I would just reiterate that the water service delivery plan that's in front of you at the moment is again, as we've said, is a snapshot in time, and Selwyn District's council's kind of take on where we're at the moment. Murray and Alex, I wonder whether it's valuable just speaking a little bit more to the strategy, the water strategy document that's going to be developed, and how it might maybe address some of Grant's concerns.
Thanks, Tim, and thank you, Grant, for the comment. Yes, I think just to step back and look at the high-level requirements in terms of process and what's expected between now and, let's say, the end of this calendar year. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, the Commerce Commission and Te Awamutu Arawai are putting together their various regulatory compliance and standard information for us, which we're going to be able to review and comment on shortly. That will provide, I guess in some ways, the broad tramlines of expectations from a central government perspective about where the focus for water service delivery, both in drinking water and wastewater, should be. Second to that, we've already signalled, I think, with you that we're intending to have a workshop on the drafting and negotiation around the statement of expectation from the council as shareholder to the CCO. That, in my experience of negotiating these sorts of things previously, is best done in a collaborative, open manner. And I think, Grant, the expectation that you have of us to apply good asset management, procurement and commercial contracting practice to the procurement and delivery of water services is sensible, and that's certainly our intent. Our response to the statement of expectation, once it's confirmed, will be the drafting of a letter of intent which speaks to how we will give effect to those expectations, and that will also include the beginnings of the jointly developed water services strategy, because there will be other elements of water services that are remaining in-house within the council. So those two things will need to be joined up and aligned so that they make sense and they don't necessarily cross over with each other. The timing on the development and confirmation of the water services strategy, from memory, Alex, I think is within 1 month from the year in which it is due to begin being enacted. So that gives us the period of time Q4 this year and Q1 2026 to get that done as we move into the 2026 financial year, recognising that the service level agreements and other services provided by council to the CCO that are included in those agreements that you saw, I think, last week or perhaps the week before, mean that there will be no interruption to service delivery on the way through. So to wrap that up, yes, it will be the intent of us working with you as the shareholder to develop the statement of expectation, for us to develop a statement of intent and response, and to jointly work on developing and confirming the water services strategy, which will give effect to the things, Grant, that you've mentioned. Thank you.
I'll reiterate to you, Megan, you're not going mad. That was my understanding of what happened at LTP time. So, yeah, I support you in that, and it is hard to look at that and have faith in what we have in front of us. And I'll note a bit of a frustration for me is that somewhere between 3 and 4 o'clock, our board document has been refreshed, and I've lost all notes that I've written on this document in Diligent. So it becomes quite hard to give you the feedback that I spent the weekend writing. So, you know, this is a bit of a frustration that we know that happens when we refresh documents, that we lose our notes and annotations on those. Yeah, that's where they've gone. It's happened before, but I'll note that it's a workshop, so that's fine. I can reread it and re-give that feedback at some point. But it goes along the things of, this is, again, what Megan has said, it all just feels really rushed. And, you know, we get this on a Friday, this is a 130-page document, this is really meaningful for us and our community. And you're feeling this amount of pressure, and yes, I understand that's our job to do this, but I feel uncomfortable about it. I had written some notes on here, so I can give you those things as feedback that I had written down. And so this might actually be something that might sit with your statement of expectation, but it led me to think around, when we're looking at this financially, is around procurement and project management strategies to actually stop the cost from further escalation than what we're already seeing in this plan. So maybe that sits with that, and we can defer that over. But the other thing was around water charging and billing arrangements, and I just see that we're putting in there 2024-25 rates when we are looking to the new financial year, and with this being approved in September. So I don't know whether these are things that just need to be updated, because when this is approved and people are looking at these things, you know, it might seem immaterial to you, but I think that the public are going to take some interest in this stuff. So the rest of it I'll have to go back through and put in writing to you.
Happy to receive that feedback, and if it's easier for us to sit down with you and record that instead of you going through that process again, we're happy to do that too. But Alex, you might have some comments on Lydia's other questions.
No, I think that probably the discussion around, you know, the funding in the plan is probably less about the water services delivery plan and more about the long-term plan. So I think that's a distinction that I like to make, that this document basically just reflects what's already there. So if there were, you know, some errors or changes in those documents, then that's probably where we need to rectify. It's less about the water services delivery plan, which is supposed just to be a modelling exercise in terms of the establishment of a CCO. So I think it's, if rather than making changes to the water services delivery plan, we probably need to look at those other documents that inform the water services delivery plan, and I'm not sure what the process is, you know, to make those changes. And then just repeat what Mary says, more than happy, Lydia, to save you some time and just get the feedback directly that we can maybe reflect in the plan. And in terms of the structure of the document, one of the things we are trying to do, and clearly we need to continue to work on that, is the briefing document, the 3 pages at the front, was supposed to provide you with you know, fairly comprehensive picture of what you have there to try to help with the reading of the document. So we'll continue to work on that until we get that right. And we also try to split the document into 2 parts. So the actual plan is about 80 something pages, and the other some appendices that hopefully you would have seen before. But good feedback.
I think it was Deborah in front of me.
It's me. Thank you. Just one thing I've picked up. So on page 48 of Diligent, it's got the stormwater, the number of issued consents, expiry timeline. In the first column, you've got expiry less than 1 year, and there's a total of 1, but there's not just zeros for the others. I'm not sure whether that's right. So that's on page 48. Now, just generally looking at resource consent compliance, so I've brought up a few times here about having a reporting limit higher than what is the consenting limit, and I'm just wondering whether that's something that would be to be brought up in like the statement of intent or something like that. I'm not sure about how it works. Yep, cool, thank you. Well, I will be bringing it up then.
Look, we're also happy to take any of those sorts of ideas and feedback early so that we can actually craft something of value to start with as a sort of a straw person guide to a discussion. So by all means, if it's helpful again for us to sit with you and record some of those ideas, we're more than happy to do so.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you for the work. And Megan, you're not going mad. I remember that conversation quite well as well. And I think one of the issues with regards to the costings often comes back to what is the community having to pay with regards to, I guess, the water and the wastewater, but including it in this particular process. Is it going to be managed by a targeted rate? Is it going to be managed by a capex and targeted rate? There's lots of questions that need to be worked through with regards to how you're actually going to collect some of these rates from the community with regards to, and I'll even mention development contributions within that scenario as well. I guess I have just a query. On page 7 of the document, I note that an explanation of what a territorial authority provides to do to ensure that the delivery of the water services will be financially sustainable by the 30th of June 2028. Then I've got part E, and then I've got error, not a valid result for the table. And I've also got that on my copy, and I'm not reading it off Diligent actually, I'm actually reading it off an email that was sent. Page 7 of 137. And then we have O, which also manages an error, not a valid result for the table. So I'm just, I was just actually wondering, you know, is it essential to have these tables? Why is it marked on my copy as an error? And I'm reading, as I said, the circulated copy that was circulated by email on the Thursday. I've also managed to take the time to do some exercises with regards to some of these funding figures. And I sort of question, you know, where we're at with some of these funding tables. I know we've taken them from our LTP process and they've been picked up and put through. But one of the issues that always happens when you go through an LTP process is you're not quite sure what your capital expenditure is going to be, what your procurement is going to be. So it's only really an estimate until you get to the costings. And we've given an estimated cost of what it's going to cost to service our wastewater and water to our public through the consultation document. And I see that that's the document that's been lifted and put into this document. And I can see that this document will not actually end up in someone's drawer. This document is going to be used as an important baseline data document for reading to understand the charging regimes that have actually happened with the consultation process through to what's actually happening on the ground. So I consider that this, because it's so comprehensive, because it's been put together quite well with regards to the information that is all supplied, it's been condensed, I would actually use this as a very good reference data, as baseline data for the future performance of a WSCCO. And I wonder why that is why DIA is actually requesting all of this data so it can be used as a baseline monitoring recording. So I'd just like to highlight the errors and the importance of this document, the way that I see it being developed as providing baseline data.
There's probably quite a few questions in there. The rest I will attempt to respond to those. I have in page 7 on that table, I also have the same statement. So I think that's just been a draft. That's probably what happened, but it's good that we picked it up so we can correct that. In terms of the information, what we have used for the modelling is the information the council, have used before in the long-term plan and some of that. So that's consistency in terms of what you're looking at. We definitely appreciate the need to mature our capital development and kind of project management and asset management capabilities through this process. And I think we talked at our last meeting that that's one of the benefits of having a very narrow focus where you can build that kind of deep technical skills around those things. So in terms of the DAA intentions around the data that's provided, I can't comment on that, but the figures as you rightly pointed out, will have to be revised as you get close to the delivery, and then the prioritization again will be adjusted based on some improved methodology. The team are currently working on that now.
Thanks, Deborah. Just to add to Alex's comments, the Commerce Commission have been very clear from the very beginning of this process that they will be collecting an enormous amount of information and drawing some of that information also from the old National Transition Unit, which is probably a bad phrase to use around here these days given Three Waters and its history. But there was a significant amount of data provided by all territorial local authorities in relation to their performance around all of their water assets. The comment from Commerce Commission yesterday was that they will be asking councils to currently at baseline what their current performance is, and then start to develop the economic and water standards regulatory framework around that information. My view to them was that just because somebody has a capital plan and they spend all of it doesn't necessarily mean that they've shifted the dial in terms of outcomes for communities and or ratepayers. So I was quite forthright with them in that regard, which was received with some interesting reactions. But in reality, what the Commerce Commission ended up landing on was as the economic regulators start producing these league tables, for want of a better term, around TLA and CCO performance of water services delivery, they expect shareholders to be using that to hold their CCOs or in-house units to account for performance. So that's in addition to the work that we would necessarily do in negotiating and understanding our own performance management framework as part of the Statement of Expectation, Letter of Intent and Water Services Strategy. So in essence, there's a second layer of accountability that sits with publicly disclosed information coming out of the work that Commerce Commission and Te Aroha RFI are doing in water standards and that broader regulatory space. So I think there is going to be, for want of a better phrase, information up the wazoo that we're going to be able to use to monitor our performance around delivery of fresh and drinking water and wastewater services to the Selwyn ratepayers.
Right. Apologies if I've missed anything in this document, but I just would like some clarity. So in terms of levies, the first question is it something that the Commerce Commission is going to set, and how far away are we from looking at that? Are the levies going to create sufficient DC costs for your dynamic adaptive pathway planning for growth because obviously growth and new infrastructure is a significant cost. Looking at your graphs here for our ratepayers, and I'm constantly bleating on about the cost here, because obviously I've got to that page. The median household income is estimated at $123,000, which is a far cry from what a lot of people are actually living with. And you've also increased the inflation at 3% every year, but we are in a cost of living crisis, and that's becoming stagnant. So the modelling is probably a little bit off, because we're not expected to see the continued inflation at 3% increase on wages continuing on at this point, not from the way that the modelling should be set based on current data. I guess really coming down to it, are we looking at these new levies addressing that growth paying for growth that we're all been asking for?
Well, I'll start by saying that I don't want to be guessing what kind of the ministers will do with that regard. There are some benefits with regards to levies, so I don't want to comment on that. But with regards to the DC contributions, I think there's some benefits from a CCO perspective in terms of how the DC are treated by LGFA. There's an opportunity to treat them as revenue, which the council currently doesn't have. So that will have a significant improvement on our finances. There is also, I think, an intention to consult on DC contributions in the not too distant future. It will probably be done jointly by SDC and the CCO. And I think, again, there is a view that there needs to be some improvements there. But again, I don't want to guess what that is. What I can confirm is that with some of the new guidelines that LGFA has issued recently, for the CCOs, there will be some substantial improvements for the region in terms of how we are able to collect some of that money.
Is that standardised across the DC or unsure at this stage?
I think the way that LGFA will treat the DC or recognise the DC contributions for CCOs will be consistent across the country. But that's not for the councils, as far as I can tell.
Yes, kia ora. I thought I would take the opportunity just to sum up my thinking at this point, since we've all had an opportunity to talk. And I wanted to explain that the reason why I shared my questions in advance was to enable really good discussion at this meeting. And because I've seen, particularly over the last year, when difficult questions are asked that don't have the obvious answer, it's told, we'll get back to you. And I trust that council staff are getting back to the councillor, but it's not actually coming back to all of us. And quite often that makes fragmented kind of decisions, and it means that we all can't be part of the discussion and decision. So that was the intent of sharing the questions in advance. So my position is still that I support the CCO model, and I do understand the need for a plan, and this plan, and I'm not suggesting that we throw the plan out, because I think that instead, if this document contains a known material inaccuracy and that we're not going to correct because we want to act with pace, then I can't have confidence that the rest of the document is accurate. And so, from my perspective, I don't want to support the inclusion of the funding to Taumitu in this way. And it's not because I don't want the funding for Taumitu, it's just that I think that it actually undermines good governance, and I think it misrepresents our processes that we went through. And so I'd like instead to just slow down and fix the known issues and adopt a version that we can actually all stand behind and say is accurate and correct. From my perspective, hearing that the big document's going to be the strategic document and the letter of expectation, my concern is I'm dealing with material over the last couple of days now that I have no place to know how I take that back and engage meaningfully with Taumitu to say, everything that I told you last year was wrong, this is now right. And I would prefer us, if we were to slow down, have the time to properly engage with Taumitu, talk through what that expectation will be, because some of you have raised that you have concerns with it just being put in blanketly, and there are discussions that need to occur with Taumitu, and that way we'll be able to move forward with a document that I think has a good basis, will support and enable the letter of expectation and also the strategic document. And then the last thing I wanted to say is, look, it's really rare for me to spend days with anxiety about what I'm going to say in a meeting. And the reason why I've been anxious over this for the last couple of days is I thought I had really good, valid questions. And since then, my concern has been that if there is a level of nervousness about what I'm going to say, then I've said this before, that I would prefer people to come and talk to me about that. And I'm sitting here in a representative position, and if people choose to go and talk to my chairperson instead of me, then that puts me into a very challenging position, and it means that I can't turn up here and really truly stand with the rest of you and speak my mind, because I don't know the conversations that have occurred outside of here. So anyway, that's all I wanted to share.
Thanks, Megan. Grant?
Thanks, Megan. Appreciate your comments. I was feeling a bit lost because I couldn't find all my highlights, and if that is true that we've had a refresh and we've lost all of them, I feel really aggrieved because I've spent a lot of time on this document. And if we know that this is a problem, can we get them back? I mean, if this is an ongoing issue, can we solve it so this doesn't happen again? Because I spent hours reading this and going through it, and I guess you all did as well. So that's the point. But I guess I just want to reflect back to the chair about what are we trying to achieve here, because when I go through my notes that I'm trying to make here, a lot of them are largely operational. Is this the Bible or is it the form guide? Because if it's only the form guide, let's not get too worried about it. But if this is the operational Bible that the company's going to run by, this is important, and we need to have it exactly right. And I raised some of these questions with Alex the other day. I think we're seeing, perhaps from my point of view, a bit of anxiousness about not enough information about what our new company will look like. Is it an all singing, all dancing, fully formed company? Is it a slimline digital entity that kind of contract everything out? I think we're probably missing the benefits of having the early establishment of a board to support Murray and coming back with this is what we intend to develop here, because the questions I've got are largely operational and they could be answered by a really clear definition of what it is we're setting up. What does it look like? Is it a full service? Is it a contract out? What is it? Because that could drive some of the questions and answers.
So, Alex, you touched last week on the size and what you're setting up and things. So maybe there's some comment back to you, Grant, there. And Murray, then for you to, Grant's key question there is, where does this fit in the matrix of the documents that are going to be presented, and how much Bible versus form guide is what we're talking about today?
Thanks, Sam. And again, Grant, thanks for your comment. It's the form guide. It's not the operational Bible, as I've mentioned, and I think Tim, as you mentioned in your opening remarks too. This is a bit of a baselining exercises for central agencies and officials, and the real work comes in the next sort of 3 to 4 months as we head into those discussions and jointly working up the SOE, the letter of intent, and the water services strategy. I'll leave Alex to respond to the balance, Sam.
But I'm not sure that I can add a lot more. I mean, as I said last time, we heard what the council said in terms of what we need going forward. We are looking forward to engaging with the council and with the staff in terms of how do we build an organisation to deliver better outcomes for the community, and this is kind of building on the work that has already been done. So it's kind of step by step. We first, so we also kind of building that blueprint as we go along. So I mean, it's super exciting both for the region and for the whole country to be in this position. so far the work has been done has been received well, which kind of give us, the encouragement that we are pointing in the right direction. I agree with the point that Grant was making before about, we need to rethink of how we provide these services and, give them that longevity so that we build something that's going to be, long lasting and have the effect that we impact. This document is, if you like, another piece of the puzzle just to kind of provide some or demonstrate that we can still remain viable by adopting this model. So, I mean, that's essentially what the document does. One comment that I would like to make in terms of what Megan was saying before, if there is an error in the document that arises from, a discrepancy in terms of what is contained in the long-term plan, we can remove that part from the document until there is some clarification as to, what happened with that. And Tim talk about the review that is currently underway in terms of the actual decision and reviewing some of the footage from the meeting. The key here, as I said, is that this is just kind of helping us to continue to take another step rather than making a new decision for the council. It's it's just a reflection of what has been agreed before.
Thanks, Sam. Grant, I'm sorry, I've neglected to mention and respond to your comment around the board. I'm not sure if this has been traversed previously in meetings that I've not been able to attend. Very early on when I was appointed, I began the process of setting up an appropriate way for candidates to be identified, a skills matrix which the local water Dunmore subcommittee saw. We've developed advertisements, we've done a fair bit of research, we've got a long list of candidates. We were ready to hit the go button on that. We were asked to pause on the basis of the trustee and director appointment policy going through a review process. So I'm sitting there waiting, ready to go, sort of in the starting gate, as it were. And the sooner I can get that board established, the better I think it will be for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And Grant, you asked around this, it's an important document because DIA wants to see it, but it's also a tick box exercise to get to the next step because everyone in the country has to produce one of these as a one-off to show that decisions made make sense. And so that's where we're at as tick boxing that, and the indications from DIA is that we're working in the manner that they would expect. And we'll have to wait till they formally come back to us after we submit it, but it's encouraging to hear that back.
I guess the fear is that we sign this off and it gets held up and say, well, you signed this off. So there's still opportunity to come back and have another lash at it.
Yeah. Deborah.
Look, just briefly, I want to touch on what Nicole's actually said about the consenting process. And I'll refer you to page 43 of 137. And I was actually reading this document with regards to the non-compliance issues. And I guess one of the things that I have found lacking is the general reporting to the governance board with regards of non-compliances or how a non-compliance has turned up. Now, if that has not been regularly reported, because some of the non-compliances is the first time I've actually read them in this document. Other non-compliances I've actually read through a media statement, or I've managed to track down the appropriate consents from Environment Canterbury to understand what's been registered. I just wonder if we're not getting this reporting from a governance board, right, within our own system at the moment to be good governors, what have you got, or how are you going to ensure that through your governance model that you are going to have this reporting coming through to you so you are fully aware of decisions that would need to be made at your board level? And the reason why I'm saying this is you'll have to develop a policy around this, but I want to highlight this because it's quite frustrating when you find out you know, some of the issues, and you wish that they had been reported to you as a governance board, because that's what a good governance board actually is with regards to process. So I just want to highlight a deficit that has happened around our council table, and I would like reassurance that as a WSCCO or a SIL, that you are going to have policies in place to make sure that that reporting comes directly to you to be effective, and how that's going to be reported from the board through to us as a council, that is going to obviously affect our consumers, and also it will have to go through to the Commerce Commission and probably Te Ara Atawai. So
Deborah, that's probably outside of the Water Services Delivery Plan, which is the things that we've said and told our community we're going to deliver. I'm not saying it shouldn't happen, but for this discussion, we just need to think about how the expectations we have on the CCO fit with our letter of expectation, rather than this here, which is really about delivery to community and uplifting existing things. So thank you for raising, but I think it's another forum where we bring that back in, Murray. Just before I come back to you, Megan, we've talked about how there seems to be no question that there was a conversation last year during the long-term plan where water services at Taumotu was discussed, and that council, the tone of that conversation was, if we're going to have to cut something, then that's something that council's going to be okay cutting. I'm summarising, but that's sort of what I've heard here. But when the long-term plan was adopted, the long-term plan has in it services for Taumotu. And again, this is just because it's 12 months ago and no one's got a perfect memory, but both those things are true. So it's not like we have to try and make one thing true and the other one not true. And I just wonder whether the intervening piece is the work that you did, Tim, with your team to bring back the savings. So we said make savings and we're okay with Taumotu being out. There might have been some other things raised that we were okay with being out too, but that stands out because Megan, you sit around our table and it was raised back with us. And then when you came back, Tim, you haven't highlighted that actually we were able to keep Taumotu in and make these other savings, because otherwise I think we might have remembered that. But you have made savings to keep the $40 million down, but we haven't identified exactly that was to keep, as a part of that, we've been able to keep Taumotu in. I'm just trying to understand how around the table we keep what we have said happened as, like, how do we hold both those things? Because they've both now happened. Is there another explanation to where that sits? Because if it's in our long-term plan, we can't now take it out just because some of us might remember that it was taken out, because it requires consulting with our community again, because our long-term plan confirmed that it was in.
Look, I can't explain it. It's Sam, and I think the terminology we've used around the room today is, Megan, you're not going mad, and I'm certainly not suggesting that, Megan, you have gone mad. What I'm looking at is the information that I have in front of me, and the information that's all we can go on. And the staff submission that Sam is referring to is really clear, that the funding for Taumotu and the servicing of Taumotu remains, that there is no change to that funding in the long-term plan. It was 12 months ago, it was a long time ago. I can remember robust discussions as well, but the information we have is that funding remained in the long-term plan. And I'm sorry, I don't know what else to say.
And so in which case this work that's been brought to us today is accurate from the decisions that council has previously made as far as they've been recorded, and we've communicated that. Yeah, okay. Megan.
I wasn't going to comment any further on that. I was just going to ask a clarifying question based on what Murray raised. So Murray, you said, look, you've gone off, done the skills matrix, got a collection of people together, done a lot of work on recruitment of directors, and I guess I've got two questions on that. The first is, I've just tried to see whether or not the skill matrix ever did come back to the Local Water Done Well Committee, because I can't find that it ever did come back to that committee. And the second part, the second question I have is, Is that actually appropriate, or is that the role of the appointment committee? Because why do we have an appointment committee? And this is purely from a process perspective, it just seems disingenuous to be appointing anybody to an appointment committee if all of that's already been done. So what's happening here?
I'm happy to respond to that, Megan. There have been no appointments made, and as would be the normal course of affairs in preparing candidates for interview, somebody has to do the work. We've engaged an external consultant to do that for us. It hasn't been done by us per se, but we have been across the process saying, here is a skills matrix, these are the sorts of things we're looking for. What is the potential pool of candidates that might be available to us, so that when we advertise, if we don't have anybody turning up that we thought we would like to talk to, we can then ask that agency to go and speak to them and see if they're interested enough to become part of the process. The appointments panel is the only one that will make the decision in terms of going from long list to short list to interview candidates and then recommendations to this council for endorsement.
Sorry. But it's like I've just never been part of an appointment panel. Like the appointment panel would normally say, we are going to an external consultant, we are doing this. What I'm really confused about is why the chair of the board has done this work that I would have expected the appointment panel to do. So it's very out of practice of anything I've ever seen before.
You and I might have to beg to differ on that. And I'd also note that we inherited that contract with the external consultant prior to my arrival. It was something that was already in place before I started.
Lydia?
Well, I guess that's a little alarming to me, because sitting on the Local Water Done Well Committee throughout the whole process, we had been asking for the skills matrix, we had been asking, you know, how are things going with recruitment, all of these things, and we hadn't had that conversation at subcommittee, and then this type of stuff comes out here. So it is around the process, and it becomes incredibly frustrating that, you know, we try and do our job by asking all the questions and be told, no, we're not doing that yet, no, we haven't done this, but actually it has been happening, and this is just the thing that is incredibly frustrating, you know, and it goes back to the LTP with Tamutu in and out, and it comes to the information that we've been given to try and do a good job, and we really do want to do a good job, but we can't do that without the clear information in front of us. You know, if we all have an understanding of something that's happened and then something different is coming out at the other end, then that's a bit of a red flag for us as a governance group of what are we doing and what are we being given? Because, you know, I think about, you know, if we're preparing candidates, I think that in the scope of this, it should actually be something that is given to the public. We shouldn't have a pool of candidates, and maybe that's a different way of working. But yeah, in my experience, it's a little bit different. I guess I'm a little bit disappointed to hear that when, I guess for 6 months I've been asking those questions and not been given the information that had actually been happening.
So I think that the process that Murray has outlined is maybe not is not the total process that you're imagining, because Murray's outlined that there's some work that he's done as chair to understand the people that he's going to need to work with and be around and the types of skills that he's aware of. There's still an advertising, a public call for the best people to put their hands up for this. There'll be at least a nationwide search for these people, if not further afield. And there's a skills matrix that will need to be approved by governance around this table, whether that's through the subcommittee or through everyone that's here. Not the subcommittee, sorry, the search, the appointments panel. And so that's all still to come. And so the work that Murray's done is really just to be the chair, and the work that we would expect the chair to do is to start to identify the types of people that would sit around him. And there were calls for the matrix to be shared at the subcommittee, and then we killed the subcommittee to allow this work to happen with all of council. And then all of council said, nope, don't appoint anyone until we've gone through a refresh of our appointments panel, and we're doing that next week. So the reason why this hasn't advanced is because, as governors, we've said, hold off, slow down. and in the interim, we've got rid of the subcommittee to this point. So I think that what has been explained is actually what we would expect. It's just Murray's taken some initiative to get on with thinking about the types of people that might also want to put their hand up through the publicly advertised process that we're going to run. Murray and Alex, is there anything else you want to add around this water services delivery plan? I think we've covered off lots of things today. There's obviously going to be some continued follow-up. There might be some notes that it sounds like there are notes that people have lost that they want to share with you. So feedback directly to the two of you, or is that coming back to you, Tim? Just tell us what the next steps look like.
Yeah, it's thank you. It's a joint document. So obviously the stormwater part, remains with STC, and actually at the moment we are all STC. So that's we're very happy to hold the pen and collect any feedback from the council. That's I think the beauty of having this type of session where we can have a open discussion about the document and how to make that a better document. So yeah, if you let us know how you want us to collect the feedback, we will tidy it up and submit then the final draft to you for your consideration. The final point for me would be that Sharon isn't here today, but she had seen the document and again confirmed that she was relatively comfortable with where things are at, because she needs to endorse the document as a final step.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to the end of the briefing. Appreciate your time. Have a good evening.